Lilibet Diana had been christened. Why would they use a title for their children to represent an institution they loathe so much? Harry and Meghan have never provided any evidence for that highly incendiary claim.
Something is not just wrong, it's being quietly buried in plain sight. And Piers Morgan just ripped the curtain open, dragging a question into the spotlight that no one inside those polished palace walls seems ready to answer. Not about Prince Harry, not even about Meghan Markle. No, this time the tension coils around two names that were never supposed to be controversial: Archie Mountbatten-Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor. And the deeper you look, the more the story refuses to sit still. Because this isn't just gossip anymore, it's a pattern of missing clarity, shifting details, and a silence that feels louder than any statement ever released. It didn't start as a scandal. It never does. It began as a whisper, something small, something easy to dismiss, a question here, a discrepancy there. But then it came back again and again, each time sharper, each time harder to ignore. And standing at the center of it, refusing to let it die, was Piers Morgan, relentless, focused, almost surgical in the way he kept circling back to one thing. Not an accusation, not a theory, a question. Simple on the surface, dangerous underneath. Why doesn't any of this fully line up? Because when you start connecting the dots, titles, records, timelines, something unsettling begins to form. Each detail on its own, harmless, explainable, but together, they don't sit right. They don't settle. They linger like a puzzle with one piece deliberately missing. And the more people try to ignore it, the more it pushes forward, demanding attention. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. But because this isn't just about paperwork, this is about identity, about lineage, about a system that has survived for centuries on precision and control. The monarchy does not do unclear. It does not leave gaps. Every birth, every title, every record, meticulously documented, carefully preserved. So when something appears off, it's not a small issue, it's a crack, and cracks spread. Watch how the focus shifted. At first, it was about stepping away. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle breaking from royal life, creating distance, redefining themselves outside the institution. That was the story everyone saw. The escape, the rebellion, the reinvention. But what quietly followed them was the title: Duke, Duchess. Royal identity stitched into every move, every deal, every headline. It didn't disappear, it evolved, it traveled. And suddenly, the contradiction became impossible to ignore. Public criticism of the system paired with continued use of the very status that system created. Walking away, but still carrying the crown shadow. And then, just when people thought they understood the narrative, the spotlight snapped onto the children. Prince, princess, words that aren't just decorative. They come loaded with history, expectation, responsibility. Yet Archie and Lilibet are growing up thousands of miles away from the structure those titles were built for. California sunshine instead of palace corridors, privacy instead of protocol, freedom instead of duty. And that's where the tension sharpens. Because what do those titles actually mean in this context? Are they symbolic, strategic, or something else entirely? And just as the debate reached a boiling point, the past came crashing back in. That interview, the moment that changed everything. Oprah Winfrey sitting across from Meghan Markle as a claim dropped that sent shockwaves across continents. Concerns about Archie before he was even born. Questions tied to skin color. And alongside that, the issue of titles. The world reacted instantly, divided, emotional, explosive. But then came the pushback. Piers Morgan again, this time pointing not at emotion, but at structure, at rules, at something older than all of them. The framework set by King George V in 1917. A system that dictated who gets titles and who doesn't. According to that structure, great-grandchildren don't automatically become prince or princess. That's not opinion. That's protocol. So now there were two versions of reality colliding. One driven by lived experience and global sympathy. The other anchored in historical rules and institutional logic. And neither one fully erased the other. They existed side by side, clashing, unresolved, uncomfortable. And that's when something subtle but critical happened. People started looking closer, not just at the headlines, at the details, at the documents, at the things no one expected to matter until they did. Because once doubt enters a story like this, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It asks new questions. It revisits old moments. It connects pieces that were never meant to be connected. And suddenly, what looked like isolated inconsistencies starts to feel like something else entirely. Something patterned, something controlled, something unfinished. And the most unsettling part? No one is stepping forward to shut it down completely. completely. No definitive explanation. No clean resolution. Just fragments. Just silence. Just a growing sense that behind the polished statements and carefully chosen words, there's more. So now the question isn't just what happened. It's why hasn't it been fully explained? Because in a system built on precision, confusion doesn't just happen by accident. It lingers for a reason. And just when it feels like the story couldn't get any tighter, any more controlled, any more suspicious, it cracks open again. This time, not with words, not with interviews, but with something far colder, far harder to dismiss. A document, a record, the kind of detail the monarchy has built its entire credibility on for generations. Because in this world, names are not just names. They are identity. They are proof. They are history written in ink that is never supposed to change. And yet, it did. The focus snapped to one specific piece of paper, Archie Mountbatten-Windsor's birth certificate. At first glance, it looked routine, ordinary, exactly what you would expect from a system obsessed with order. The original entry was clear, precise. It listed Meghan Markle by her full name, Rachel Meghan Markle, alongside her royal title. Standard procedure. Nothing unusual, nothing controversial. Just another carefully recorded royal birth filed exactly how history demands it be filed. But then, something changed. The record was altered, not corrected, not updated with additional detail, altered, and the difference wasn't subtle if you knew where to look. Her full name gone, removed completely. In its place, a stripped-down identity. Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. No first name, no surname, just the title. Clean, simplified. Almost erased. Now pause there for a second, because in any ordinary situation that might seem insignificant, a minor administrative adjustment. But this is not an ordinary system. This is a structure where every comma, every signature, every word is deliberate. Changes are not casual. They are approved, documented, justified. There is a trail. There is always a trail. Except here, the trail splits, because the explanations that followed didn't align. One version suggested palace officials requested the change, an internal adjustment to match royal protocol. Another pointed in the opposite direction, sources indicating it came from Meghan's own side. Two completely different origins, two narratives that refuse to merge, and neither one closes the gap. That contradiction is where the tension explodes, because when a system designed to eliminate confusion produces two conflicting explanations for the same action, it doesn't resolve the issue, it amplifies it. It forces people to look closer, to question deeper, to stop accepting surface-level answers. And once that door opens, it doesn't close easily, because now the focus widens. It doesn't stay on one document. It spreads to the process itself, to the way royal births are supposed to unfold, to the traditions that have been followed with almost obsessive consistency for generations. Think about it. Every royal birth before this followed a pattern so rigid it was almost ceremonial. Official announcements, exact times, names of attending doctors, signed confirmations, a notice placed outside Buckingham Palace like a ritual repeated for over a century. Precision, transparency, certainty. But then look again at Archie's birth. The announcement didn't come immediately. It came after. A delay that created a gap. A small gap, yes, but in a system like this, even small gaps echo loudly. Then there were the missing elements. No detailed medical verification presented in the same way as previous royal births. No signatures from attending doctors displayed with the same clarity. Pieces of the standard process absent. Individually, each one explainable, circumstantial, but together they begin to stack. They begin to form a pattern that feels incomplete. And then comes Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor, a completely different scenario, yet somehow intensifying the same unease. Born in California, outside the UK, outside the traditional royal system entirely. No palace bulletin, no formal public documentation following the historic model, no visible connection to the long-standing procedures that have defined royal legitimacy for generations. Now step back and look at both situations side by side. Archie, delayed announcement, altered document, missing traditional confirmations. Lilibet, born entirely outside the system without the usual institutional framework. Two different circumstances, but both deviating from the same established pattern. And this is where it stops feeling like coincidence. Because when tradition shifts, especially in something as sensitive as lineage and succession, it doesn't just pass quietly. It demands explanation. It demands clarity. And when that clarity doesn't come, the silence starts to speak. And behind that silence, something even more unsettling begins to surface. Not publicly, not officially, quietly, carefully. almost invisibly. Reports start to emerge, whispers of an internal review inside Buckingham Palace. Not a public investigation, not a formal inquiry announced to the world. Something controlled, something contained. A verification process focused on records, on documentation, on alignment with established procedures. Now understand what that means, because in this system, you don't revisit records unless there's a reason. You don't quietly review documentation unless something doesn't fully settle. Every detail tied to identity, to position, to succession, it's all foundational, it's all protected. So if those elements are being examined again behind closed doors without public acknowledgement, it suggests one thing. Something matters more than it appears. And the possibilities that emerge from that are explosive. A silent freeze where titles remain but slowly fade from visibility, becoming less prominent, less referenced, almost like they're being eased out without anyone officially saying it. A quiet reclassification, adjusting how names and titles appear in records, shifting positions subtly, repositioning without headlines. Or the most direct path of all, a complete removal. A decisive action taken not for drama, but for preservation, for control, for the stability of the institution above everything else. And hovering over all of this, Prince William, watching, calculating, not reacting publicly, not engaging in the noise, but positioned at the center of what comes next. Because his role isn't about commentary, it's about continuity, about protecting a system that has survived by adapting, but never appearing unstable. And that's what makes this moment different, because it doesn't feel chaotic, it feels controlled, measured, like every move is being considered long before it ever becomes visible. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable realization of all. This was never just about two children. It was never just about a title or a document or a delayed announcement. It's about what happens when tradition collides with modern reality. When a system built on rigid structure meets a world that refuses to stay contained. When identity, power, and perception start to blur in ways that can't be easily defined. Because if titles can exist without traditional roles, if records can change without unified explanations, if processes can shift without clear acknowledgement, then the question doesn't stay small. It expands. What does royal status actually mean now? What defines legitimacy in a system that's evolving in real time? And most importantly, what else has been quietly adjusted, quietly reviewed, quietly controlled without ever being fully explained? Because the deeper you go into this story, the less it feels like a series of disconnected events, and the more it feels like something unfolding in stages. Controlled stages, measured silence, strategic absence of clarity. And that silence, it's not empty. It's holding something that hasn't been fully revealed, something that people are starting to notice piece by piece, question by question, contradiction by contradiction. So now the story doesn't end. It lingers, because if everything truly followed the rules, if every detail was exactly as it should be, then why does the explanation still feel incomplete? And if it is incomplete, then what part of the truth is still being kept just out of sight?